An excellent topic, friends. Let's dive into history. Buckle up. This will be a detailed and candid discussion about one of the world's most famous tanks and how even the finest machinery can become a victim of circumstances. If you're interested in the history of the Great Patriotic War stripped of myths and glossy veneer, and if you'd like to explore more stories like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss our upcoming in-depth analyses. Most importantly, leave a comment below telling me which other weapons or wartime episodes you'd like me to cover in this same format. Your opinion shapes our content. Now let's begin. Today's protagonist is the Sherman. Not the American Civil War general, but the steel-clad M4A2 Sherman, an American tank that became both a long-awaited aid and a complex puzzle for Soviet tank crews. Imagine this: spring of 1943. The Battle of Kursk is still only brewing on the horizon like a thunderstorm. After the horrific losses of 1941 and 1942, the Red Army desperately needed equipment. Yes, our factories, evacuated beyond the Urals, were performing near miracles, churning out thousands of T-34s. But war is an insatiable Moloch, devouring metal and men at a terrifying pace. And so, via Arctic convoys braving icy Atlantic waters under relentless attacks from German U-boats and aircraft, these overseas guests began arriving. Tanks unlike anything we had. Tall, with massive cast turrets and sloped sides. To Soviet tankers, accustomed to the austere, cramped, yet beloved T-34, the Sherman looked like a product of another civilization. And in many ways, it truly was. Inside, there was genuine comfort, by tank standards, of course. A spacious three-man turret where the commander, gunner, and loader weren't constantly elbowing each other. The commander had his own cupola with a hatch. Every crew member had their own emergency escape hatch, an absolutely critical feature in combat when every second counts. There were even padded seats. But most importantly, every Sherman came equipped with a radio. Not something installed haphazardly after delivery, but a standard, reliable radio set. This was a revolution in command and control. Now a platoon or company commander could issue orders on the move, coordinate maneuvers, instead of relying on waving flags or hoping others would guess intentions from turret movements. The suspension system, reliable with vertical volute springs, provided a smooth ride. Powered by General Motors diesel engines. It seemed the perfect ally. Technically advanced, built with typical American generosity and concern for crew welfare. It was awaited with curiosity and hope. But, as often happens, first impressions proved misleading. Historical and economic context. Lend-Lease as an industrial miracle. To grasp the scale of what was happening, we must momentarily step back and look at the big picture. The Lend-Lease program wasn't merely aid. It was an unprecedented historical act of redistributing industrial might. The United States, whose territory remained untouched by war, effectively became the arsenal of democracy. Its factories, converted to wartime production, churned out quantities of material unimaginable to the warring nations. The figures are staggering. Over the course of the war, the USSR received more than 7,000 Sherman tanks of various models through Lend-Lease. Thousands of aircraft, hundreds of thousands of Studebaker trucks, which became the Red Army's lifeline. Millions of tons of explosives, aluminum, copper, gasoline, and food. It was a high-tech industrial transfusion into our war-ravaged economy. But here lies the first paradox. American industry prioritized mass, assembly line production. Quality was often sacrificed for quantity and speed. And the first batches of M4A2s delivered to the USSR in late 42 and early 43 were far from perfect. Frankly speaking, they were raw. Their main flaw was unreliable fuel injectors in the GM 6046 diesel engines. The motors overheated and failed literally during marches. Imagine the feelings of our tank crews. They receive this long-awaited, beautifully crafted machinery, climb aboard, and within 20 or 30 kilometers, it stops dead, belching smoke. Entire trainloads of Shermans arrived in Murmansk and Arkhangelsk only to be sent not to the front lines, but straight to training centers and repair depots. There, Soviet mechanics, often assisted by American instructors, literally brought the tanks up to operational standards, replacing those faulty injectors and fixing systems. This delayed their deployment to combat by months. Thus, by spring of '43, very few Shermans were actually at the front, and each one was worth its weight in gold. Baptism by fire, the 5th Guards Tank Brigade. Now we arrive at our central actor, the 5th Guards Tank Brigade. By February of '43, this unit was arguably the most international formation in the Red Army. It was a veritable Lend-Lease showcase. Its ranks included 11 Shermans, for medium M3 Lees, those odd tanks with multi-level guns, 5 light M3 Stuarts, and 18 British Valentines. Impressive on one hand, but a logistical nightmare for commanders and, especially, mechanics. Consider the logistics. Each tank type required its own spare parts, specialized tools, manuals, often in foreign languages, and had its own quirks. Nearly half of this motley fleet sat idle in repair shops or lagged behind during marches. There simply weren't enough spare parts or trained mechanics. This was the first warning bell. The Army had received sophisticated machinery but not the full support system needed to maintain it. A tank isn't just a gun and armor, it's also fuel, ammunition, track links, filters, batteries. And if the tank is American, then all those supplies must also be American. And they were catastrophically scarce. But then came May of 1943, and history took its first turn toward success. The attack on May 2nd became a textbook example of well-organized combat. And this is the crucial point. The brigade's commanders didn't just hurl brand-new Shermans forward recklessly. They applied sound military science, a discipline often ignored in the heat of offensives. Thorough reconnaissance was conducted. Artillery pounded German positions, suppressing strong points. Most importantly, seamless coordination with motorized infantry was established. Here, the infantry wasn't just an appendage to the tanks, they became the tank's eyes and shield. Despite all its virtues, the Sherman had one significant tactical drawback: poor visibility from the drivers and commander stations. The crew was effectively trapped inside a tall, narrow turret. Infantry moving alongside would point out targets, warn of ambushes, and clear trenches the tank simply couldn't see. In return, the tanks crushed machine gun nests and artillery crews, clearing the way for the infantry. The result was brilliant. The brigade broke through enemy defenses, crossed the Psysh River, and captured the strategically vital height 118.0 with minimal losses. The Shermans performed magnificently. Their 75mm guns effectively demolished field fortifications, and crew survivability was excellent. But the most important discovery came after the battle. Damaged but unburned Shermans weren't abandoned on no man's land. Recovery teams retrieved them, and here emerged another American marvel: ease of repair. The Sherman's design was modular. Engine compartments, transmissions, many components could be replaced right in the field by brigade-level mechanics. A tank hit in the suspension or engine could return to action within days. This was incredibly valuable. The brigade's resilience and ability to sustain prolonged combat depended directly on this returnability of vehicles. It seemed the key to success had been found. But war is a fickle mistress, and she quickly revealed the flip side of the coin. By late May and early June, that same brigade, using the same Shermans, suffered a series of painful setbacks. The scenario was practically identical, a carbon copy of mistakes made back in 1941, only now with newer equipment. Tanks were thrown into attacks without proper reconnaissance. Routes weren't checked by sappers. What happened? Shermans advanced into positions and ran straight into layered minefields. Explosions rang out. Shredded tracks flew apart, immobilizing the vehicles and turning them into perfect targets for German artillery and hidden Panzerfaust teams. Losses to mines were colossal before the tanks even glimpsed the enemy. Then came the classic tragedy. That same infantry, which had worked so brilliantly in early May, now either fell behind or, seeing the carnage, dug in and refused to advance under withering fire. The brigade's combat journal contains a terse, chilling entry: infantry did not follow the tanks. Put yourself in the Sherman crew's place. You miraculously skirted the mines. Your tank is intact. You storm into German positions. But around you aren't your own infantrymen, only enemies. From every crack and trench, they're firing at you. You can't clear the trenches. You can't hold the ground you've taken. Your tank is a steel fortress, but a fortress surrounded on all sides. And then German counterattacks begin, supported by assault guns and artillery. The outcome is inevitable. In the first 3 days of June alone, the brigade permanently lost 7 Shermans. Many damaged tanks were left rusting in no man's land, impossible to recover under fire. The tank's advantages, crew survivability, ease of repair, were instantly nullified, because the system into which it was integrated had failed. There was no reconnaissance, no artillerie-suppression, no infantry support, no organized recovery. Abandoned to fate, even the most advanced tank becomes a metal coffin or a target on a firing range. So, who exactly was the Sherman to the Red Army? It wasn't a wonder weapon that turned the tide of war. But it was something far more important, a reliable, technologically advanced, mass-produced workhorse. In the hands of competent commanders within a well-coordinated tactical system, it performed miracles. But when used as a blunt battering ram, the old-fashioned way, without regard for combined arms cooperation, it perished just like any other tank, and even more painfully, due to its complexity and scarcity. The Sherman story in the Red Army is the story of cutting-edge technology meeting the brutal reality of the Eastern Front. It's a lesson that wars aren't won by individual weapons, but by systems. Training, logistics, communications, inter-service coordination, commander's skill, and soldiers' resilience. The Sherman was a mirror reflecting both the strengths and weaknesses of the mid-war Red Army. It was good, but it couldn't compensate for systemic failures. And yet, when the system functioned properly, it became unstoppable. This story remains thought-provoking even today, reminding us that any technology, no matter how advanced, depends entirely on the people operating it and the support system sustaining it. Friends, that's the story we've uncovered, not just of a tank, but of an entire philosophy of warfare. If you enjoy dissecting narratives like this, seeing real human decisions, mistakes, and triumphs behind dry tables of specifications and technical data, please like this video. Your engagement helps the channel grow. And of course, leave a comment. What else would you like to hear about? The fate of other Lend-Lease vehicles? Katyusha rocket launchers mounted on Studebakers? Soviet aces flying Airacobras? Or perhaps a specific battle episode? Your voice is our primary guide. Subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive into history. Until we meet again on air.